Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the NGA podcast, your go-to source for all things gymnastics. I'm your host, Rebecca Grady, and I am here with my incredible co-host,
Dr. Ian Kreider.
Rob Axelrod.
All right, so in this episode, we're focusing on the technical side of vaulting. More specifically, the importance of vaulting uphill, improving technique and power, and building confidence through smart progressions. We'll be breaking down a few key training tools and setups and drills that help develop power and shape under reduced impact. These aren't just the standalone drills, they're a part of a bigger progression designed to improve technique, mindset, protect joints, and reinforce strong body positions. So let's get started. And I'm thinking we're going to start with maybe showing the videos, and then you guys can start breaking down why this is important and why you're using it.
Fantastic.
I just need to get it. All right, Rob, tell us about this drill.
Okay, so what we have here is just this is a basic side station that they do on the return when we're usually vaulting uphill. And as you can see, we have a couple panel mats there, give them a nice surface, and then the line of the panel mat going down the middle, keep them in range, like for an arrow directional, keeping them straight onto the board. And the barrel's there for them to get their body shape to come over the top round and to leave their hands in the front. So we want their hands down. Maybe we can kind of freeze it right there. So we want to drag their hands over the barrels. We want their hands as low as they can get before they finish, as they're finishing their round-offs, and that's going to create their swing back into the table. Most of the time I have them do a straight arm backward roll instead of bent arm backward roll, but I like to have these side stations just to remind them of what they need to do when they're turning over onto the board, what's the roundness of the shape when they're hitting the board. It's almost like a little bit of a pike shape with a rounded chest, arms down, seeing their hands on the hand mat before they swing to the table. There's too many kids try to create round off with their hands or by their head, and then they only have this little swing back to the table. The bigger the swing back to the table, the longer the block. And I want them to lead backwards, shoulders past their head. And I tell them that they have eyeballs in their knuckles. And if they just reach back with their hands and their knuckles first, that their hands are going to eventually hit the back of the table because it's just going to happen. They can see with their hands. They don't need to look at their head because then they get this, and they get this, and then they wind up going over the table like this.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help us. So.
Yeah. I think some people forget that vault is just action reaction, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, this will be an older reference, but hopefully at least the coaches here will still know what slinkies are. But like a slinky, right? If you just set a slinky on the top of the stairs, nothing happens. But if you wind it up first and then let it go, it'll continue to go down the stairs, right? And so that's what we're trying to do with Yurchenkos is we're trying to wind up and then reach for that action reaction. And if you don't get that action, then you won't get the reaction.
Yeah, and the slinky is like a great one for people that know what a slinky is. I'm actually thinking maybe I'll order one and we have a set of stairs and we'll just use it going down. But I use a bow and arrow. I talk to them about pulling back the bow and arrow. Put the arrow inside the bow and I pull it back just a little bit and it goes bloop and it falls off. And I'll wind it up as long as I can, pull it back at a full extension and then let it go. And that's my back handspring. So I want that back handspring in a really big arch with my feet as low to the board as possible, as long as my feet are in front of me, not bent. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, and the more, maybe when we do a Yurchenko, we'll slow it down. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you look at Simone, probably the best example, not everybody can do this, but the best example is her hands are on the table and her feet are only about this much from the board. And then that's the wind up or the pull of the bow and the arrow like this. And then you let it go and it snaps straight up and down, right? Because you want to get off the table at 12 o'clock. If we don't have our feet behind us or if we hit the table too high, then we wound up getting off the table past vertical and staying screen there. So if everybody understands the fact that the more wind up we have, and I get that by getting them to see their hands longer on the hand mat, keeping their hands down when they finish the round off with the rounded chest. And so one of the big corrections that I like to make is they go round arch. And it's a really hard arch. And then it's a snap your toes up to the top. And we do lots of drills where they'll do bridge to the tumble track and then just, I help them to pop up or bridge against the wall and have them snap their feet off the wall just to come to handstand. That part of the action part that we're trying to get off at 12 o'clock. Yeah. So that's a great little side station I like to have. And then usually I have lots of side stations when we're going uphill. And I think that's our next video. We rep the Fast Fluff Vault and Floor Trainer. You can see it on Instagram at, I think it's at Fast Fluff Vault Trainer. The whole idea behind that is, I think it's the next video previous to it, is that it blows up behind the table. Yeah, and you don't need to spend $6,000 or $7,000 worth of mats to put behind the table to vault uphill. And if you're not vaulting uphill, there it is. We have an 18-inch fluff mat that's in there. It's nice and soft, but it has to be used with the mat. We put an 8-inch mat in there, and a lot of times I do super uphill. I'll put like a 32-inch on top of that, and they have to go to a stand. But the greatest thing about it is you can see the little zipper on the side. It just unzips and it drops down to the ground, and whatever you're landing on, you can flip on. Oh, you want to go back uphill? You just zip the zipper, it blows back up. No one's fighting for mats. We're not moving mats. It stays on the vault all the whole time. It's my favorite thing that I have. There you go. That's a really good one. We can do that one in slow motion. It's really nice. It really shows where her hands are coming off. This is a half on. So she gets this nice position over the top, reaches far with that second hand, and then she gets it pretty much going off pretty nicely with a nice round shape there. That's pretty good. I like that. She had a little bit bent elbows on the table. Well, always remember that the first elbow, the front arm, can be bent. There is no deduction for bending your front elbow, as the judges will tell you. And just like in men's gymnastics, Ian can second me on that one, is that they use that front arm to bend and then really get a good push off of it. But
yeah,
I do like the second arm. I like the second arm.
If you want to get in early. Yeah, if you want to get in early, you have to have the front arm bent. If you have it straight, then you have to wait till your body rises enough to get both arms on the table. So you do have to come in straight with that front arm once they get fast enough to do that. Right? And then it's like anything, your technique is going to evolve as you go throughout your career. So the same round off that I do in level 2 is not the same round off that I do for like floor, for instance, right? Is not the same round off that I do for level 4 with a round off handspring, is not the same round off that I do for a 1.5 punch front. And so your technique is going to change along the way. And so, yes, I wouldn't teach my level 4 bent arm half on at first, but as they get faster and as they start moving over the table, you go, yeah, get in faster. Sometimes they do it automatically, but sometimes you have to give them permission. You're like, hey, no, it's okay. You can get that arm bent in there. And then another thing that you'll see some elite level vaulters do, which I don't recommend for most female gymnasts, is they'll turn that second hand out instead of keeping it in like a normal round off. They'll turn it out, and what that does is it allows them to block even before vertical. And I've had some coaches from like some gymnasts that I've coached. I've had some coaches prior to them that have taught that second hand out like that because they see these elite level men's vaulters doing this, and it's like, yeah, that's perfect technique for a Souk triple full, but it's not going to work for a tuck Souk. They're not fast enough to get off the table. They're going to end up hurting their elbow or hurting their wrist or something like that.
And also, it's really not good for the wrist and elbow.
Yeah.
I mean, I unfortunately had one of the girls that's in the video. She popped her elbow just because she turned her hand wrong on the bottom of the round off going into the Yurchenko.
Yes.
You know, on the ground, and she popped her elbow just because she turned it backwards. So it's not something that I would play with for beginner coaches or beginner Souks or any of that jazz.
No, the kids aren't fast enough. And then to bring it back to your Chenkos, that hand should never be turned out because they don't need to pop vertical. They need to snap down and snap through. So that hand has to be turned in. And so if you have
I still want to come off the table at vertical, but I want them to be able to turn over the round off. And that's the part we're talking about with the hand with the round off, just so that nobody gets confused. You know, I teach, put the car in the garage and back it out, right? Mm-hmm. You know, car in the garage, back it out. Or I'm good with two hands like this, just not the second hand like this.
Right.
Is that better?
It's
like this. Slow-mo. Like this is good. Like this is good. This is great. This is no good.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
If
I'm super picky.
If you're a lefty like me.
Yep.
I'm super picky too. I'll put chalk on their hands and say, look, this is what your hands did. And same with their back handspring. Their back handsprings have to be like this on the table, not turned out like this.
Yep. They don't get to move on until they fix that. And so, you know, and I'm curious to see what you do with like your beginners. For me, if it's just a let's see who can go over the table day, you know, I usually have them go, all right, it's a 1-step hurdle, cartwheel step in. And then once you do that, then you do a 1-step hurdle round off. Once you successfully do that, then you get to add 2 steps until I'm no longer comfortable with catching you. And then I step out of the way and you get to go over the table. So, and some of my bigger girls, they only get 3 steps and I'll catch them, but they run from 7 steps. And I'm not, like, I don't know. When I was a younger coach, I would like these level 10s when I was working at Flip Fest, right? These like level 9s and 10s be like, hey, can you catch my round off? You know, I'm going to do like just round off rebound. Can you catch me and set me down? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah, I remember like just standing in front of the vault and these girls that are as big as me, just sprinting down the runway at me doing this round off rebound.
Yeah. 100 mile an hour, and their feet come right past your face, hit the board, and then you're grabbing their hips, and they're going over the top.
Yeah.
You know, I never even thought about it. And somewhere about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not spotting these anymore.
Yeah.
And
I'll do it from like
Taking
3
out.
steps.
But
I'm
I'll
not
do the
doing it
little
from,
kid. I'll
from
do the little
7 to
kids
9
all day
steps.
long. My
Yeah.
best vaulters now that are my level 9s and 10s, I start Yurchenko drills round off onto a board or round off in between the zone mat, just pike backs onto a mat or holds and then arch opens to the mat on every level 3 vault stations just to get them
nice.
used
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the board, right? Actually, Dr. Ian was here, so he saw some of those little kids. Did they do that for you? I didn't even get to watch too much vault when you were here.
They did
at
a little
camp.
bit.
So I
they
always
did
have a
some.
round off station for them, round off back handspring station. Sometimes it's just a round off back handspring off the ground, uphill to an 8-inch mat, then maybe 2 8-inch mats. And then I introduce the board, round off straight jumps, round off candlesticks, down a wedge mat, flips off a board. And then, we introduce the back handspring over like a T-trainer style. So the T-trainer that I call T-trainer is the tumble track T-trainer, but we also have a T-trainer that's, from Mancino. That's a block with the leather top, but it's a foam block, not a real table. And so we use that too to go over some of these drills in here. And then going back to the uphill drill is sometimes I'll put a wedge up there also. If I would have had more time and make some more complex drills, which I'm happy to do for anybody that would like to see in. They can always reach out to us. You can either reach out via the podcast or rob@aerialgymnastics.com, and I can send you anything you'd like to see. This is your Yurchenko that's uphill. You should probably show this one. Sure.
Okay.
So the one before was a half on, and there you go. That's pretty nice. Let's watch that one again. She's actually, we'll do it one more time. So she's got a lot of good things going on. There's a couple of little bad things. You can slow it down a little bit, right? No, on the board. So right there, go back. Right? Keep going a little bit more, back. Right there. So she's got her heel down first. It's a perfect example of something I don't want to see, and that pushes her hips back. So it's something that we're working on. So she flat foots it on the way in. Then she's got pretty decent hands right there, a little bit of bent elbows. And then right here, the first thing to go off the board, bam, her head. Mm-hmm. So we get that broken shoulder angle. And you can also see I was talking about go back to where she's actually on the table and hold it right there for a second. So by the time, keep going. Right about there. Her feet are great there. I'd love to see that position of her feet if her hands were already on the table, because the next little step a little bit forward, hands hit the table. She's not bad. It's decent. I'd like to see a lot more arch so that when she actually comes off, she gets off a little bit late. She's past vertical, but she's got a decent shape. She's new to the Yurchenko world for flipping. She does a nice job on, so behind that, you can see the air track. This is the fast flush trainer, but behind it is the air track, and then there's a T-trainer at the end of the air track. If you back up a little bit on just this video, you'll be able to see it. Keep going. It's right there. That's the tumble track T-trainer off of an air track, and that's like their next step. That's our first step not first step for flipping, but that's one of the beginning stages of where they flip. And I have some in here. You can see those too. Hey, handspring flip. So we go into free foam, and then we get ready. We put a mat, so round off, back handspring, flip. So she does pike. I don't really like pike. She's just trying to get to the layout shape. I do open. I go tuck, grab, open tuck, and no pikes. If they're really talented and I'm looking to get a score and I can get them to do an open pike, her positions are pretty decent, just a little soft in the legs. Her head stays in pretty decently. And then it's easy to go from open tuck to layout. But when you get a kid who's level 9 and they're doing a pike, pike Yurchenko, and then at level 10, they really need to get that, 10-0 start value. Or at level 8, they're doing a pike Yurchenko, and at level 9, they need to do a layout to get to a 10-0. It's really hard for them to learn how to open up their hips when they're so used to piking, and it takes forever. So I skip the pike stage, go from open tuck, you just straighten your legs, you have layout shape. So the layout shape sometimes will get a little bit hollowed, which will look piked and could be considered a pike, but it's way different than teaching pike off the table or pike into the flip. I just don't do it. I'm sure people could argue with me back and forth, but I've been really successful at vault for a really long time, and I like to stick with what works for me. So that's what I go with. Not my way is not the only way. Obviously, there's some kids that have really great pike Yurchenkos and then come back the next year and do a layout Yurchenko. I just have a little bit of a struggle with some of my athletes going from pike to layout, so I just skip it.
Yeah. And I like teaching. I'm kind of the same way. I like teaching a layout as soon as possible. And that might even be just, hey, you work layouts into the loose foam, and then we compete tucks onto hard mats. But because tucks and pikes or twisting is all about hit the layout shape first, then do something. And it might be then tuck or then then finish the layout or then twist or whatever it is.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I mean, some of these kids that are doing tucks and they're like 7 and 8 years old, and Yurchenko tucks at 8 and 9 years old, maybe they're a year or two away from competing it, but they're doing layouts, and they're doing layouts as soon as they possibly can, and they just compete a tuck.
Yep, absolutely.
Now this it might be. Yep. Yeah, this is one of my athletes. She's going 10 this year, trying to. She's doing a great job. She was doing layouts and fulls for a year, and then she had some issues going backwards, and she had some issues just in general going over the table. Actually, not any. She's got really decent technique with this. I like it a lot. She's just a little bit fresh. You know, she hadn't done them in a while, and they're on a mat, and I kind of like asked her to go on a mat, and she unwillingly went on a mat, but I don't force them to do anything. We don't make them, you don't want to go on a mat? Okay, don't, but at some point they need to. And she's now doing 5 a day on a mat, and we're getting ready to put it off the table. And she never had a problem going backwards to do the layout. It was the full that was giving her a little bit of issues. She was trying to do the layouts and not twist, and twisting, she felt like she was going to twist. So we just stopped twisting for probably 6 months. And now she's back doing those. And if you go back in there to those videos there, Miss Rebecca, we have some that are nice layout shapes off the T-Trainer also.
One thing that I like to, while she's looking for it, one thing I like to tell my gymnasts with the flips is to kind of watch the table go away from them. How much do you like to kind of get their eyes working with their head position?
Yeah, I mean, I start with originally in the beginning is to see their hands on the ground as long as they can, and then I'd like them to see the table as they push away from it. And one of my biggest pet peeves that I with the girls is they like to push. I'll do it this way: is they like to push this way. They don't like to do this and push through their hand. They don't like to come off the table and use their hand. And I do a drill with them. They just stand hand to hand with each other, and we push off of our shoulders. And that's great. Nobody goes anywhere. And then I just go like this, I push, and then they go flying backwards. And they're like, wow, just from a push. So if I can get them to push through and see their hands before they come in for their twist. And I teach arms down. I don't teach arms up. A lot of times they pull up into it, but I start with arms down, 2 hands in the front pocket. Because like
it keeps the shape a little bit better.
If you're in this shape and you just drop that one arm across a little bit, you're going to twist anyway. So it keeps the shape much straighter, less piking, less angles. I do some other drills. I use the wedge mat a lot. If you want to go to those, so it looks like it's kind of scrolling around on there for you. But I use a really big, thick wedge mat, and I put a panel mat on top of it. And I'll tell you why I put the panel mat. People say, well, why do you do that? And we just got a brand new one of those wedge mats. The other one was about 25 years old. Just getting...
Okay.
All right, so we're back here. So another one of the drills I like to use is the wedge mat. We do front handsprings off of them. We do round offs for your sukes, and then we do back handstrings off the wedge mat. And so I did it with no panel mat, so it's good. You can use the wedge mat. This is an extra big, thick one. It's a Mancino one. We have another one exactly like it. It's a little bit softer. This one's really firm, but I like to put a panel mat on it. You'll see in the next couple of videos why I put a panel mat on it. Then next to it, you'll see there's the panel mat. So I use the colors on the panel mat for where their hands are going to go. They're hurdling, so you got hands on red, feet on red, hands on red. So red, red, red. And depending on the panel mat and where and how you put the panel mat and how big your cheese mat is, sometimes it might be blue, because sometimes I hang the panel mat over the top of the wedge, and then it would be blue, blue, blue. So it's red, red, red. So if you first set your hurdle is in front, hands go on the front, the first red. There's the front that we showed you, the front handspring timer before. And I use the same thing. I use the red and green for where their hurdle is. Actually, she was at red and blue, it looked like, before the hurdle. And then she's reaching out for the red for the front handspring front. So then I have this little T-Trainer that's next to it. Or is this Bella? She's flipping this one, I think.
Yeah, I think she's...
It was just a better Yurchenko. And then there's one where she flips. So I actually flip off of the wedge mat from the back handspring. I think Quinn does run a back handspring flip as well. That's her front. It's a little early tuck, but she's just playing with those recently.
Do you want me to go back to the T-Trainer?
No, I was going to say, do you want to go forward a little bit on a couple of those? Because it turns out Yurchenko into Yurchenko flip off of the wedge. That was a little same thing. She's a little bit early tucks. So we turn that, timer into flip. The next one of the ones that I'm going to be showing you is that Sorry about that, everybody. Is in over here, the T trainer, there's a different style T trainer, floor T trainer, and then there's the smaller air track in front of it. A lot of times I like to go off the floor and I just call it block vaulting. Now this happens to actually be in the shape of a vault trainer, an actual trainer. So it's not like a tumble track trainer. That would be the T trainer. This would be a vault trainer. It's actually got the leather top like the vault. And so they do some half-ons off of it. They're into loose foam. I don't really like to go into loose foam. I like them to go onto a mat. You could go to the next one. The problem that I have with this when they're going onto a mat is they're flipping down. And I don't ever really want to flip down. So like when I'm at a meet, if they're not timering uphill at a meet, if there's not enough mats to stack up where they can turn it over, I won't even let them do a timer at the meet because we don't want them to flip below the table. We want them to flip above the table. And that's the whole purpose of the uphill vault trainer, the fast fluff trainer that I was telling you about. And so, but here it's okay for the little ones to just get used to it. And then I take out the mat and then I let them flip. And then what you saw was they probably did a bunch of timers onto the mat. Then they took it out, and of course they want a timer into the foam, which I really don't need them to do. We let them flip into the foam. So they flip off of this, they flip off of the wedge mat, and then in that same picture you can see the actual T trainer, the tumble track trainer, they flip off of that too. So those are all the different, 2 or 3 or 4 different stations that they have to get the flip. And then, of course, they get the flip off of the table. And my whole principle behind the air track and the T trainer is that they do so many numbers and nothing hurts. The air track is soft on their joints. The T trainer is soft on their wrists. They're landing on a mat. Maybe it's a mat in the pit, or maybe they're just landing in foam. I'm not a big foam guy. I like to land on a mat. They can roll their ankles. That's a whole nother story for another something or other that we make. It's called the pit fluffer, but and why our pits are always so fluffed. But I just prefer them to land on a mat and be used to landing on a mat. And so they do number after number after number. And then a lot of times they'll come and they'll go uphill, 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 and then we'll drop it. And they've never flipped before. And then like their first one they're going to do, they just go and they wind up flipping. Like, oh, I didn't mean to flip. But they're so used to flipping off of the air track and T trainer that the flip becomes not a big thing. And my rule here at the gym for anybody in the numbers groups, right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or let's call it the ones that actually flipped, 8, 9, 10s. When they go to a meet, I stand behind the judges. There's no need for me to have to stand underneath them because I'm that confident of them and they're that confident of them. And I think all of these different drills that we put out there and all of the work that we put behind the progressions of the wedge mat to the actual vault trainer to the T trainer to the uphill, 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 uphill. I do only 2 days a week of flipping and 2 days a week of uphill training. And on the days of the week that we are flipping, so let's say call it Mondays and Thursdays, we vault uphill, and Tuesdays and Fridays, we vault. But we start with 3 timers uphill, and it's so quick, we unzip it, drops, and we flip away. And if I feel like the flips aren't going really well that day, we go back uphill. And the whole thing is the better the flip is uphill or the timer is uphill, the easier the flip becomes. And in fact, some of our girls flip onto that T trainer, the fast fluff trainer, because they can flip that high. And I like to do levels. So sometimes, like I was telling you, I put the 32-inch mat on there and they do super uphill and then I drop it and then they flip to it. So that's like 3 8-inch mats. Or 4, right? 4 times 8, 32. So 4, I'm not so good at math, right? So 4 8-inchers, so that 32-inch mat, and it's on top of a resi. We used to have it on top of free foam. We changed it about 2 years ago. We put in a whole resi system. The kids don't like to land on the resi, which drives me crazy. But the resi's low, and I understand why they don't want to, and it's a little bouncy when they land, and I get that too. But I do all kinds of levels. So sometimes it's 32 inches, sometimes it's 16 inches, sometimes it's an 8-incher with 2 4-inchers, a hard 4-incher, or a 4-incher flipped upside down. Then I turn it over, it's a hard 4-incher on top, more consistent with a competition style landing. And I will stand by, I don't ever put kids on competition ground surface before the competition. When they get there, they can figure it out. When they get there, they find their legs. It's a little bit harder in lower levels of gymnastics, say 8, 9, and 10. Like in college, it's the same way. Those kids don't ever land on a hard surface because there's no need to. When they get to the meets, they 1 or 2, and it's like, a little stinger in their ankles where they got to get used to the landing, and they take some 1 or 2 to figure it out. And then the next 3 or 4, they make, obviously we watch what happens in college gymnastics, lots of sticks going on. But I like to protect my athletes even at the young age.
So what if people don't have the T trainer? What are some other options that they have? Because I know that I've talked to people who don't have a lot of equipment in their gym. So what are some other ways they can do a lot of this?
That's a question, actually, because I think that the T trainer is something you should have in your gym. It's cheap enough to buy from Tumble Track. Not that I'm not a vendor for Tumble Track by any means, but um, for us, we have it attached to a foam pit, which you can put a mat in, and we have an air track that's 8 inch or 12 inches thick by 30 feet long. It's an $8,000 air track. A lot of people don't have the money for that either. But if you have just a T trainer, which I don't know the price of it offhand, because again, I have no idea. But I put that on the floor, and they do round up back handspring off of it. So I would suggest to get that. If you don't have that, then you could buy one of those cheapo air tracks like you saw in there. That was I don't know, a 4-inch jobby by 8 foot, maybe 8 foot. That was one of my former gymnasts who's at college right now. And it was in her basement, and we took that because she's never going to use it again. So those are cheap enough to buy, to use. That's easier than a board to have to punch off of on their ankles to get them used to. And then they can just go off of a block. And if they don't have a pit to go into, then they can go off of a block onto stacked mats. If they don't have a porta pit, then just put a couple 8-inchers behind it and have them getting used to tumbling uphill. So whether they're going off an air track or a vault trainer, because a lot of people have the vault trainer, that's like a standard in their gyms because it's great for little kids, and little kids can do squat-ons on it and jump offs and handstand flatbacks off of it and handsprings over it. Those are really good to have in your gym. I suggest you get one of those, and if not, then use a block, trapezoids, and you turn the trapezoid sideways, and then they handstand off of that, or they half on off of that, or they back handspring off of that, and just put mats behind it. I would prefer, I know I showed it, they're flipping down, but that's because they were getting ready to show you that they're going to flip off of that vault trainer, off of that little air track. You don't have to have all the bells and whistles. In fact, sometimes all the bells and whistles make it harder to go over the table. And I've said a million times before, my best vaulters that I've ever had in my career came from the gyms that I worked at that had no pits. Because you had to spot them all up onto a resi or a whale mat, whatever you want to call it. And then the first time you take it away and you say, okay, go, they better go, because it's a hard mat that's underneath them. And, maybe you're spotting one or two, but the first time you walk away, you're like, no praying. They've done all the work. So I'm really confident that my athletes are going to make it every time.
Yep. Yeah, I've just been listening this whole time. This has been great. But I come
Me
from I come from one of these gyms that we don't have a T trainer, we don't have a vault trainer. We do have an air track though, and so that was a nice addition because we don't have a floor strip into the pit. We only have vault or bars into the pit, and so we can use that air track on the vault runway because it's a thick air track to not only tumble, but I'll also put. We actually have one of those like foam, I guess, like warp walls that are. It's like a mat, but it's a warp wall, right? And it came with an attachment to make it taller. Well, none of our little 6-year-old ninjas are going up to 14 feet or whatever that this warp wall goes up to. And so instead, we use that as like a little vault trainer. And it works pretty good. For my Suks, I have to put a little panel mat on the back end to kind of angle it a little bit more. But for the Yurchenkos, they're fine with it going nice and flat for now. And that works really well so far.
I'm not sure what the company is. I don't want to say the wrong company here, but and maybe you have these in your gym, the P-bar blocks. Do you have those? It doesn't matter what company it is, but they make a P-bar block, and they're great standing up. But if you turn it sideways, right, and you put that down, and you put a board in front of it or off the floor, even better, round off the floor, block off the P-bar block, flip into the pit. That's great too. You put that on top of your air track. Those are great. And again, I had kids doing Yurchenko double fulls off the floor, off a block into a free foam pit. And that's just for getting the awareness and being the confidence to go. Because if you could do that off of a block, well, add a board and a table and holy moly, watch them vault.
Yeah, add the technology that's actually made to help them with it. And,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and there's all kinds of ways to get creative with these drills, but nothing is going to replace knowing the proper technique and knowing how to communicate that technique. And these drills are super important, and they're wonderful to see. And make sure that I tell my girls that the pickiest thing I'll ever teach them, or the pickiest thing I am about that I'll teach them, is a round off for Yurchenko. Because if it's off a little bit, it gets more and more and more off after the next two skills.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to be that far off if they're doing a Yurchenko full. And so I'm going to be super, super picky on this cartwheel step in onto the board. And then I'm going to be super picky for a round off onto the board. And once they go throughout those steps, then man, the back handspring, that's the easy part. It might be the scary part, going over the table. It's the easiest part of it. The round off is hard, and then if they can just reach with their hands, they've done the back handspring.
Yeah, I used to at every station have a step in cartwheel,
Yeah.
A hop over hurdle block, put your hands in between two other blocks for a cartwheel step in. And we could show that maybe when we do like a little bit of a floor video or some floor progressions. I'll show that round off station. I used to put it at every station. I'd even put it at bars just so they were constantly working on their round offs. And that's why these kids got to be such great vaulters, was all the round off. I agree.
Yeah, I really liked the drill you showed at the beginning, and maybe we'll have to do more, like you said, Rob, but going over the barrel and showing the body angles and having where your arms and hands are supposed to be at the beginning, going onto the table. I don't even think, I mean, I've learned that a lot observing you guys over the years, but I never learned any of that stuff at the beginning and the importance of that.
Yeah. Well, I know it's funny that you said that. Like when I was probably in kind of late middle school, I guess, Yurchenkos were kind of like the table had just come out. We'd switched over from long horse to the table. And then all of a sudden, every once in a while, like men would do Yurchenkos, and we're like, oh yeah, let's give it a shot. And zero technique, zero, know what to do. We tried it for like 2 weeks. And we're like, oh, that's too hard. Because we were just doing round off back handsprings up onto resi or something. We're like, okay, we obviously didn't know enough about it, but now there are so many good resources to learn technique for Yurchenkos. Take the time to learn it and take the time to develop it. Like what Rob said, he starts his level 3s. Just because of time and space, I tend to wait till level 4 for my girls to start working it. But anytime I can throw a board in front of a floor beam, I have them doing cartwheel step-ins with their hands on the floor beam instead of a hand pad, and feet onto the board for the cartwheel step-in. So I love starting it early, so that way we can get their wrists used to it. From a PT perspective, right? We can get their wrists used to it. We don't have to throw 1,000 Yurchenkos in one summer at that point then, because they've already developed some of the skills up to that point.
Yeah, that's probably one of the last drills that I haven't done in a while, but I used to love to do it, was take a floor beam, put a board and a zone around the board, and put a resi behind it, and they actually did hurdle round off back handspring up onto the resi. No T trainer, no vault trainer, just up onto the resi, and that's for their hand placement in the round off. And if they are slightly off, then they can't do the round off because it's bounce beam. It's like you got to put your hands on the beam. So on the line on a floor, you can do whatever you want. Some of the other things that I do is I talk about their hurdle for their feet, but like put a little guiding. The tumble track pads work the best. If you have a tumble track, just take those red pads off, Velcro them down to your vault runway, and that makes like a little channel. They have to stay in there for their hurdle, because a lot of kids like to cross their feet in their hurdle, so they do that. And it's not dangerous because it's a little tiny thin mat. If they step on the mat, they can still do the drill or the skill.
Yep. Yeah, I like that. Nice.
Yeah, I do too. Well, and from a mental perspective, I love all the progressions that you guys are doing, because the more we can build their mind on understanding what they're doing and why they're doing, the more confident they're going to be going into actually doing these skills when we go to the table. And I think that's really important. So, like Ian and Rob said, all of these drills, these setups, they're so beneficial to building strong, confident vaulters, which is what we really need. It helps refine their technique, develop power, and make real progress while reducing that impact of draining. So if you've used other progressions, if you have anything to add to this, please reach out. Let us know on social media or on YouTube. Add to the comments. We would love to hear about it, and we can add it to another video that we'll be doing. But if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with anyone who could benefit from the conversation, and thank you for joining us here at the NGA podcast. So until next time, stay happy, healthy, and high performing.